Hey there. If you're hearing this right now, maybe your heart has already traveled a long road, a journey only you truly understand. There were years when you thought you'd been left behind, but the truth is, life was preparing you for something greater, clearer, a rise your soul has been waiting for 9 long years. Tonight, let me tell you a story about the fire that once burned wildly inside you, about the doors that slammed shut, and how destiny quietly turned every wound into a miracle. Because sometimes, the most sacred thing isn't what you win, it's that quiet moment when you finally stop and realize that fire was never your enemy. Once upon a time, in a small corner of eternity, you were still a young soul carrying the fierce belief that if you were brave enough, strong enough, you could do anything. You ran. You rushed forward, never waiting, never looking back. Every path ahead looked like a challenge, and you believed that if you just pushed through one more wall, the light would finally appear. But the world doesn't move at the speed of human desire. It moves at the rhythm of destiny. And sometimes, destiny must let you fall, so it can teach you how to rise without needing to fight. There were nights you sat alone in silence, watching everything you once believed in slowly dissolve. All the effort, all the dreams you thought you could hold turning to ashes in your hands. You asked, why does it have to be this hard? Why must I lose so much just to understand something so simple? But somewhere inside those unanswered questions, a quiet miracle began to form. Because right when you thought your fire had gone out, it began to glow again, softer, deeper, and more alive than ever before. Aries, the sign of action, the spark of beginnings, but no one ever said the first road would be easy. Maybe the doors that closed weren't meant to stop you, but to turn you inward. There, within that sacred space, your fire was no longer a weapon for survival, but a light guiding you back to your own heart. And you began to realize sometimes, strength isn't about breaking through walls, but knowing when to stop before one. They say pain is the language the soul uses to grow. And you, a soul of fire, have learned that truth more deeply than most. Those 9 years weren't years of failure. They were 9 seasons of purification. Each loss, each ending, each silent moment was destiny removing what no longer belonged to you to return a part of yourself you'd forgotten. When there was no one left, you learned how to sit with yourself. When there was nothing left to prove, you began to remember who you truly are. You might have thought your fire had hurt you, but in truth, it was protecting you, guarding you from what was never worthy of your spirit. It taught you the difference between passion and destruction, between victory and peace. It showed you that not every light must burn bright sometimes. The gentlest glow comes from within, like the sky after a storm, when the noise fades and only the breath of the earth remains. And then, one quiet moment arrived when you no longer wanted to fight the world, no longer needed to prove anything. You only wanted to breathe, to rest, to live fully and honestly. What you didn't realize then was that you had already crossed into a higher frequency, a realm where the fire no longer rages, but shines farther than ever before. Life still moves, but slower now, deeper, like your heart learning to hear its own voice again. Looking back now, you see it clearly. Every road that once drained you was guiding you to exactly where you were meant to be. Every storm was only a test, to remind you that no one can extinguish the flame in a soul determined to return to itself. And when that fire learned to guide instead of burn, you saw dawn breaking soft as breath, warm as the whisper of the universe. So now, close your eyes for a moment. Feel your heartbeat fall into rhythm with the world. Let the fire within you shift, no longer the force of resistance, but the warmth of awakening. This is the first signal the moment the old story ends and a new journey quietly begins. Brighter, deeper, and more luminous than ever before. Then everything began to move again, but this time, in silence. No longer the roar of the old fire, but a soft warmth spreading gently, like a whisper from within. One morning, you opened your eyes. The light streamed through the same familiar window, and yet, something was different. The world hadn't changed, but that light no longer touched just your skin. It touched your heart. And you realized you were no longer living in a race. You were living in a new rhythm, slower, softer, more real. The things that once made you angry now barely stir you. The things that once made you prove yourself now only make you smile. Because somewhere between all that breaking and rebuilding, you learned something quietly profound. Not everything needs to be won. Some things only need to be understood. And when you understand, you let go. When you let go, you become light. And when you're light, you're free. Maturity doesn't come with age, it comes with the nights you sit alone after the storm, facing yourself without escape. You thought you'd lost too much, but what you really lost were versions of you that no longer fit. You finally saw that life was never against you. It only wanted you to learn how to live with yourself before learning how to live with the world. You began to listen more, not just to people, but to the smallest heartbeat of your soul. You realized, some answers don't need to be spoken. They live in stillness. Some of the most beautiful things don't come from sound, but from the silence between two heartbeats. And in that silence, you found something sacred. Life had never left you. It was simply waiting for you to become quiet enough to hear its voice. There are nights when you sit alone and no longer feel lonely, only peaceful. Because now you understand, loneliness is also a kind of fire. It burns away illusion, leaving behind the purest part of your soul. And once the light inside you is strong enough, you no longer need anyone else to ignite it. You radiate it yourself, a gentle kind of light, not blinding, not loud, but warm enough for those who pass by to feel at ease. The world looks at you and wonders what changed. But you no longer respond to life with fear, but with awareness. Everything moves differently now, not loud, not dramatic. Like a river that's passed through all its rapids and finally finds its way to the sea. The water hasn't vanished, it's just become deeper. And so have you, steady, clear, and full of direction. You start falling in love with the quiet things. The morning cup of tea, the way sunlight spills across the porch, the simple rhythm of your own breath. And that's when you realize true joy doesn't come from grand moments, but from the peace of finally feeling safe in your own skin. The fire within you is still there, but it's been tamed. It no longer burns to prove itself. It glows to keep you warm. And somewhere deep inside, you sense that you've crossed into a new chapter, a phase where the light no longer comes from the outside, but from within. Like when the seasons shift, no one notices the exact moment it happens, but the air changes, and the wind smells different. Life doesn't speak to you in words, it just smiles. Now, as you close your eyes, the fire is still there, no longer blazing like a challenge, but shimmering softly, like gratitude made visible. And in that golden glow, you can almost feel it, a door quietly opening, leading you to a deeper part of your journey, where even the shadows are only light. Guy, learning how to be seen. There are chapters in life when everything seems to turn against you. People walk away, work disappears, dreams shatter like glass beneath the sun. But if you pause and look deeper, you'll see it was never destruction, it was purification. A silent cleansing where destiny strips away the layers that no longer fit, so you can finally touch the truest part of yourself. For years, you lived in constant battle. Every day felt like a war with time, with others, and most of all with yourself. You believed that if you just tried harder, pushed further, stayed stronger, you would win. But win against who? And for what? Strength without direction is just a storm within. It destroys before it illuminates. You mistook resistance for action, and fear wearing the mask of courage for bravery. You weren't fighting to live. You were fighting because you were afraid to stop. And then, one day, everything you clung to, began to fall away. The friend you trusted left without goodbye. The work that once defined you came to an end. The roles that gave you worth dissolved into air. In that empty space, you thought you'd lost everything. But it was there in that stillness that your soul began to speak. Softly, patiently, like water finding its way through stone after a long rain. The clash of energies didn't come from the outside, it happened within. Between your old self, desperate to control, and your true self, longing simply to be. The old self wrestled to hold on, while the soul just wanted to breathe, to lighten, to live as the light it always was. This was no ordinary conflict, it was the deepest battle any human can face, the one between living from fear and living from love. Inside the forge of loss, you were not burned, you were refined. Like metal meeting flame, you became more flexible, more radiant, more enduring. The cracks in you were not your ruin, they were the places where the first light entered. And you began to understand everything fate took from you had already finished its purpose. You didn't need it anymore. All you ever needed was you clear, honest, and whole. Maybe it's only when the noise fades that we finally hear the true sound of the heart, and in that quiet, you realize you never truly lost. You were just shedding skin so your soul could grow larger. What once was resistance has become awareness. Instead of reacting, you listen. Instead of proving, you allow life to speak for itself. And slowly, everything softens like a fire that has learned how to shine without burning. Life, after all, is music with low notes that make the melody complete. Your losses were never the end, they were the rests between verses, the moments where your soul paused to breathe. So that one day, when you were ready, the song could rise again deeper, warmer, truer. And then, just when you thought peace and had settled, something began to move. Like the first light after a storm, a new clarity unfolded, not a question of why, but a quiet knowing that whispered, "It's time." A new current of energy, soft yet powerful, began to flow through you. It didn't rush, it invited. And you understood. You were standing at the doorway of a greater lesson, one of faith, of patience, and of the quiet strength that only stillness can teach. You may not have realized it, but your soul did. It tilted gently, as if the wind had changed direction, guiding you closer to the peace you've always sought. And in that slow, steady breath, the story continues, quiet as water, yet rising with a power that feels eternal, calm, resilient, and filled with light. Time is the most patient teacher in the universe. It doesn't scold, it doesn't rush. It simply watches as we stumble, struggle, and eventually understand. For Aries, these past 9 years have been that kind of lesson. A long journey filled with restlessness and haste, believing you were moving forward, when in truth, you were just running in circles around your own shadow. You once believed that as long as you acted, you would achieve, that if you were strong enough, determined enough, unbreakable enough, destiny would have no choice but to open its doors. But destiny doesn't open through strength, it opens through frequency. And only when you slow down, breathe softer, and listen to the wind as it brushes through your life, do you realize. Some things only arrive when you stop chasing them. Patience isn't sitting still and waiting. It's trusting the rhythm of life itself, believing that even when everything seems still, something is still moving beneath the surface. Like a seed hidden in the dark soil, it must endure the silence before it can rise. It must trust the warmth of the earth long before it ever sees the sun. And so, your soul had to learn the same, to rest in stillness, so that light could find its own way back to you. You began to understand that not every pause means delay, sometimes. It's how life rearranges energy, so you don't act from fear, but from awareness. And that's when everything started to change. You no longer needed victory to feel worthy, nor movement to feel alive. Even in stillness, you could feel life flowing through you slowly, but deeply. In that quiet, Things once blurry became clear. You realized it wasn't the road that exhausted you, it was your pace. For years, you lived in the rhythm of must. I must do, I must prove, I must become. But life never needed you to become anything it only ever wanted you to be. And the moment you truly stopped, you heard it, the heartbeat of your own existence. For the first time in years, you felt peace. Peace doesn't arrive as a miracle, it comes like a breath. Simple, quiet, yet strong enough to calm the fiercest waves. You began to see that real confidence never shouts. It's the calm gaze that knows where it stands. It's the soft smile that says, everything is unfolding exactly as it should. From that moment, you stopped trying to control life and began to dance with it instead. Each time you slowed down, it wasn't failure. It was space. Each pause wasn't retreat. It was alignment. You learned that some doors don't need to be forced open, they open when you stand still, because now you are ready. And one morning, you woke up with a strange feeling. Nothing extraordinary had happened, yet everything felt different. Your heart no longer pulled like a drawn bowstring, it moved like water. That calmness wasn't weakness, it was the wisdom born from every battle you chose not to fight anymore. You no longer reacted to everything, because you understood truth never needs to defend itself with anger. In that silence, you heard your own footsteps, steady, grounded, gentle, no longer the frantic rhythm of someone running away, but the quiet pace of someone returning home to their essence, their faith, their light. And when that peace finally soaked into every breath, you began to sense something new, as if the sky within you was expanding, welcoming a softer kind of light. It arrived without warning, like wind through the leaves, like dawn touching your shoulders after a long night. No more urgency, no more waiting. You simply stood there still, present, feeling something awakening inside you deeper than patience, brighter than faith. A quiet miracle beginning to unfold, one that you don't even need to name. One day, you suddenly realize you don't want to run anymore. Not because you're tired, but because your soul has found a different rhythm. Slower, deeper, truer. A rhythm that no longer needs to prove anything. You can't quite remember when it began. Only that one morning, as sunlight brushed across your eyes, you didn't think about what was lost. You simply felt gratitude for being here, still breathing, still able to feel the warmth of life. In that moment, something within you changed forever. You stopped chasing things that no longer called your name. The dreams that once made your heart race grew quiet. The relationships that once drained your strength became clear. Nothing disappeared, it simply drifted out of your control, back to its rightful orbit. And so did you, returning to the natural rhythm of your own being. The universe moves by energy, not by effort. When you run, you emit the frequency of lack. But when you stop, peace radiates from you like light. And everything begins to return: money, opportunity, love, kindness, not loudly, not urgently, but softly. As if they had never truly left, only waited for you to become still enough for them to find you again. For the first time in many years, you feel rich not because of what you have, but because your heart has stopped panicking. You look around and everything simple feels sacred: a warm meal, a small laugh, the sunlight filtering through the curtain, someone who stayed by your side. They were always there, but now they are miracles, because you've learned how to cherish without clinging. Peace isn't the absence of sound, it's the gentle music of a mind no longer at war with life. When you stop demanding, life begins to respond. When you stop needing to win, you realize you've already been given. Blessings don't come from outside, they come from how softly you look at the world. You understand now nothing needs to happen right now, because what's meant for you will find you in its own time, in its own way, through the right hand. And then you feel it, a quiet current, smooth but powerful, like a river that never fights for its path. It just flows, and somehow always finds the sea. Your life is the same the moment you stop resisting, it expands. What once blocked you becomes the bridge. Even the things that once terrified you turn into teachers, showing you how to trust the invisible hands that have always been arranging everything. You realize the universe never turned its back. It was only waiting for you to stop making noise. When your heart grows quiet, the voice of destiny becomes clear. You start to feel the current of divine balance where everything you once gave returns to you, not as a storm but as a gentle rain, soaking slowly into the dry soil of your soul. This peace is the reward for the one who walked through pain without losing faith. It's the gift for the soul that learned to let go without bitterness. It's proof that when you stop running, goodness finally has the space to catch up with you. And in that calm, golden light, something begins to call you forward. A whisper like wind passing through the trees, like a heartbeat shifting after a long dream. It invites you to keep walking, not to search for something outside, but to reach deeper within to the place where love is no longer longing, but a quiet miracle unfolding, soft as breath, yet bright enough to illuminate an entire lifetime. There were times when you loved as if it were the final battle of your life, with every ounce of your heart burning, fierce, unstoppable, until you fell. You once believed love was something to fight for, something you had to prove, to hold tight, so it wouldn't slip away. But now, after so many storms, you finally understand real love never needs to be chased. It doesn't burn you, it heals you. Maybe someone walked into your life quietly, like a soft breeze, no promises, no urgency, just presence enough for you to feel safe when you breathe. Or maybe there's no one at all, just life itself becoming gentler, mornings slower, afternoons lighter, smiles coming easier. Whatever form it takes, this love carries one energy. It doesn't ask you to change. It accepts you exactly where you stand. And for the first time, you are loved without having to perform strength. You can be yourself even if that self trembles, even if it stays silent. This love, whether through a person or through life itself, doesn't demand that you shine to be seen. It sees you even in your brokenness. It doesn't arrive to fix you, but to remind you who you've always been. Love like this doesn't come as a storm, it comes as rain. It seeps slowly, filling every crack left by time and loneliness. It doesn't ignite you, it softens you. Because love is no longer the place where you lose yourself to be loved. It's the space where you find yourself, so you can love another. In someone's eyes, you no longer see ego, you see reflection, a soul at peace, grounded and whole. And when you love this way, you stop fearing loss. Because you know what's real will stay, even without promises. And what leaves simply completed its purpose. You no longer need to control, no longer read signs or measure affection, because now you feel love not only in someone but in everything. Love has become the sunset on your way home, the laughter of a child in the park, the quiet gratitude you feel waking up in the morning realizing that even if life isn't perfect, you are still held by something tender and unseen. That is love in its purest form, not in words, not in grand emotion, but in a current that flows through everything, nurturing, connecting, healing. You begin to see that those who once hurt you were also teachers. They showed you what unconditional love truly means. Without pain, you wouldn't have learned how to love without fear. This love, the quiet, grounded, luminous kind, is the reward of growth. You no longer love to fill an emptiness, you love because you are full. You love because you want to give, not because you are lacking. And then, in the middle of all that peace, something miraculous begins to rise. A new light not born from romantic love, but from a deeper connection between you and what you were born to do, between your soul and the path that's been waiting for you. It's as if love itself opened another door, and behind it, your purpose and your rebirth are waiting, quiet yet radiant, ready to welcome you into the next chapter of light. Every soul reaches a moment of awakening, a moment when the old questions no longer need answers, and all the seemingly random pieces of life begin to connect through an invisible thread. You are in that moment now, the season when life no longer demands that you fight to survive, but gently invites you to live truly, to live rightly, to live in alignment with the purpose written inside your heart. The storm has passed, but it didn't leave in vain. It took away what was no longer needed and left behind a space clear, sacred, and new. In that silence, you begin to hear the whisper of your soul, clear, warm, familiar, like the voice of an old friend you'd forgotten. And that whisper tells you you are ready. Ready to step into a new phase where your actions no longer come from fear, but from understanding, from the deep trust that you are being guided. Everything feels lighter now, not because the world has changed, but because you have. You no longer push against the current, no longer force things to go your way. Instead, you've become like water fluid, soft, yet powerful enough to carve through stone. Life is no longer a battlefield, it's a river. And as you begin to move with its rhythm, doors open effortlessly as if they'd been waiting for you all along. Now you see, every experience, whether joy or pain, was a piece of a perfect design. What once made you doubt now stands as proof of your becoming. You don't need to know what's coming next, because each day itself has become a miracle. When you speak, life listens. When you act, the universe responds. Everything unfolds with divine precision. Not too soon, not too late, just like a flower that blooms only in its season. In this flow, you no longer feel alone. You can sense something moving with you, a gentle, steady force, like the invisible hand of destiny. It doesn't command, it doesn't control, it lifts you, softly, guiding you toward the light. And you realize you're no longer fighting against the wind. You're flying with it, not to prove your strength, but to become the very breath of life itself. Rebirth doesn't arrive with thunder, it comes in the simplest of moments. When you smile at a stranger, when you forgive the past, when your heart softens for no particular reason at all. That's when you know you've made it through. No more battles, no more fear, only a quiet gratitude for everything that ever was. You look back now and see the map of your soul, from the fierce blaze of fire to ashes, and from those ashes, a gentler light rising, steady, enduring, unbreakable. That is you now, an Aries transformed. A soul that has walked through fire only to discover water, learning how to flow with life without ever losing yourself. And in that stillness, something begins to bloom like a seedling meeting the first light of dawn. It is life's invitation, a sacred calling to step into your next chapter, where gratitude becomes more than a feeling. It becomes energy, a prayer, a soft bow from a soul that finally knows it is living its truest purpose, the purpose of light. Now, as you gently close your eyes, let your breath slow down, soft, calm, unhurried. The noise of the world fades away. What remains is you and the tender light blooming quietly within. The fire that once burned now becomes warmth, wrapping you in peace. No more running, no more proving. You've come home to the place where your soul can finally rest in its own wholeness. The journey wasn't just 9 years. It was a lifetime of awakening. Every tear, every loss, was a blessing written in the language of the universe. And today, as you smile, the universe smiles with you because it knows you finally understand. Nothing ever happened to break you. Everything happened to awaken you. Thank you for not giving up, for choosing love over bitterness, light over fear, for continuing to believe, even when there was nothing left to believe in. From here on, may you walk with an open heart. May every morning begin in peace, and every night end in gratitude. And may you always remember the light within you is the greatest gift this life has ever given. So as you step forward, let that flame guide you, not to burn the world, but to warm it, to illuminate it, to remind it that once there was an Aries, brave, resilient, and kind, who chose to become the light in the heart of the night.